constant does is it allows one water molecule to communicate with the next water molecule to it. Water is the best substance in the world at communicating with itself. Water knows what's going on when something's in it, when something's around it, and it pretty much occupies what we can do with it. We measure water, we call it water quality monitoring. And we have people who do this to make sure that the water we're getting is in good order. We measure properties like pH, which is a measure of acidity. We measure properties like salinity, which tells you how much salt it is in the water. We measure turbidity, which tells you how much stuff is floating around in the water, so that if you took it and you poured it through a filter, this would be the stuff caught in the filter. If you get really turbid water, it usually means there's a dog in the water and there's nothing wrong with your water. However, if you get water with a pH of like 10, now you got to worry. There's a lot of different things we worry about with water, and the quality of water is real important, but the quantity of water is important also. And as we get more and more people on the earth, we're going to need more water to support the people on the earth. And so getting our water purified is real important. There are a lot of places that purify water. Every municipality has their own water department that they have purifying the water. But a lot of these places that are purifying the water don't do as good a job as we would do if we were there purifying our own water. So one of the best things you can do is put a charcoal tap on your water system. And by putting the charcoal tap where your water's coming out of the faucet, you'll run your water through the charcoal. It'll pick up that little bit of chlorine that's supposed to be there to make sure that you're getting good water, which that little bit of chlorine makes your water worse than anything otherwise in it. Water is important. Water is what we all catalyze life with. When you get to water in biological systems, it doesn't work like water that we know it. We're used to having fresh water in our lakes and our streams, and the fish are real happy about it and they get along. But if you look at yourself as a water system stream, what you find out is that most of the water in our bodies is associated with most of the organs in our bodies. That it takes a lot of water for the heart to work. It takes a lot of water for your circulatory system to work. It takes a lot of water for your brain to work. And every protein and enzyme that you have in your body comes along with its regular carbon weight dragging along that much more water. Almost all organic systems are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, 4 elements. Water is 2 of those elements, hydrogen and oxygen, and it plays a real crucial part. When you have organic molecules that are part of your system and your water hydrates to them, it's not like one protein or enzyme takes 2 or 3 waters with them. One protein or enzyme takes about 20,000 or 30,000 water molecules with them. There is a lot of water in the body, but water is such a small molecule that you don't notice it very much. In fact, water has a molecular weight of 18 units, and most proteins and enzymes have molecular weights of 100,000 units or more. So that when you start figuring that these 100,000 weight units drag around an equal weight of water, and water only weighs 18 by itself, 1,000, that's a lot of water we're tagging around. And it's important for this water to be good. I worked in the space agency, NASA, for a while, and one of the things I was working on was water purification. We have this ideal in NASA that we want to go to Mars. And right now, the only way we can practically get to Mars is by taking 2 more water-filled rocket ships with us to Mars, because we can't get the water pure enough to be able to drink it again. NASA has spent all sorts of money on getting stuff out of water, and they can't get it all out. Water's just too good at keeping those last little bits intact. I'm starting to lose my throat a little bit, but one of the things I wanted to point out also about water is that this is not something new on the menu. In the state of Oregon, they have a great way of dealing with water. It's called Watershed Councils. Is there any member of a Watershed Council here in the plaza right now? Watershed Councils are these amazing groups where people volunteer to do a lot of work for very little money. I think that's the way it works these days anyway. If you volunteer, you're volunteering because you belong there. I was a member of the Watershed Council in the Umpqua, and our mission was to make fish passage. Every time you see a highway that crosses a river, there is a potential barrier to the fish for getting across that highway. And what we were doing up in Douglas County, Roseburg area, is we were pulling culverts that were causing these problems and putting bigger culverts in so that the fish could get passage. If there was a place where the fish had to leap more than 10 feet, we'd look at it and we'd knock down that leap so the fish could get around. And right now, one of the best things going in Oregon is the fish are coming back up the creeks. If you go out to the Rogue or to the Umpqua, you'll see lots of fish time this time of year. The fall steelhead are out. Good fish. But you know what? In Oregon, fish water rights go back as far as, 1987. That's when fish got water rights. If in Oregon, when summer gets hot, and they start cutting off water rights, they arbitrarily choose a year to cut back on, and that's what they do. So if they choose the year 1983 to cut back, that means that the fish don't have rights to the water, and they can take all the water out of the river because they said so. I think maybe we need some new water rights laws.
Can you talk about Mount Ashland a little bit more? Is Nestle coming for the water there? I heard a rumor about that.
There's rumors that Nestle is coming for the water. They are completely unsubstantiated at this time. The idea with what's going on in Mount Ashland is that there's springs in Mount Ashland that are the beginning of the water supply for the Ashland area. And so these springs are deep springs. They come out of the ground. They are good, clean water. If there's a ski slope on the water, well, there has been for all this time. But the idea of cutting down more trees and going up there and taking the water deceitfully just doesn't cut it. The water there is real important, and unless Ashland has a replacement for the water, we should be paying attention to who has ownership of that water. It's real important that our water works. The rivers and lakes in this system that we have of water are easy to tell when they're working. One of the things that I like to look at are the amount of bugs in the water, macroinvertebrates, the mayflies, stoneflies, caddisflies, all those. They're telling you how clean your water is. If you look at the water and you see a lot of mosquito larvae, black fly larvae, you don't have very clean water. If you're looking at the water and you see caddisflies and mayflies and stoneflies, chances are your water's really good. There's also other issues in water, such as bacteria and that, and you almost have to have your own water monitoring equipment anymore to be on top of things. But what you're getting out of your tap is required to have chlorine in it. It's required to have some other stuff in it, and really, it needs filtration. I think that maybe, since I know a lot more about water and could go on for hours, that if I fielded some specific questions about water, that we'd be in better shape here. I really think that when you get down to it, the water is the key thing that we need to pay attention to, and that if we watch these corporations trying to take our water, we should get there right away and draw the line. If anybody finds out for sure that Nestle's is working with Mount Ashland, That should be the first thing on the front page of the newspapers and the headlines and radio stations and such. And the idea is we can't let this happen. It's we the people, and we're part of the 99. We all know what the 99 is. Well, actually, we're all part of the one also, and everybody has to do their own thing. And it's real important as we get into these times where things are changing that you check your facts on the information that you're getting. So much of the information I read about water comes out wrong. When I go to public meetings and I read the newspaper accounts of those public meetings, they don't get it right. It's important to check facts. The internet is not a very good source of straightforward information, but it has enough facts to check other facts that if what you're hearing agrees with what you're thinking, more than likely you're thinking right. And if what you're hearing doesn't seem to match up with what you're thinking, it's time to do homework, because every so often they do come out with new facts that make more sense, but not all that often, just every so often. It's real important that we fix our education system now. I heard the veterans before me talking about the education system, and I support education for everybody. I do not support indoctrination for everybody, and we have a big problem with our schools these days in getting the information right, and it's getting to the point where I'm not sure that we're supposed to support this school system anymore. It seems more like an indoctrination system than it does an education system. I think that it's time that we started educating ourselves and finding mechanisms where we can get together and talk, not on bullhorns in parks, but in rooms where we can break bread together and really
get off the water.
Really get to the point where we're looking after each other's backs. It's time to look at the whole system, maybe even stop the flow of energy for a while, sit down and talk about what we really want and what we really need. There's so many people here who are downtrodden only because of the circumstances that have set us all up to be downtrodden. It's an image we don't really need. If we get together, there's lots of ways that we can help each other, get our facts straight, get our information straight, and get the education process working again. I'm in favor of something I call edutainment. It's combining the entertainment that we watch with things that are educational. I recently watched a movie called The Vanishing of the Bees. It is worth watching. It ties pretty nicely what's going on in the world with the way that nature works. And I really believe that we need to imitate nature with something that we call biomimicry. We look at systems and we operate the systems in the same manner that the biology operates the systems. Nature, if you hadn't noticed, is multiply redundant in the way it does things. It comes out, and if one system goes down, there's a backup system that comes up. Humans like everything streamlined. We want one way to work perfectly, and when it doesn't, we fret. It's time to start backing up our systems with things that work. It's time to start rebuilding our economies. If we look around, every one of us probably has something that we can do to earn money for ourselves, but we don't have that license that we're required to have. It's time to forego the licenses and just get to doing the work that you want to do. Life is too short to get stuck in a dead-end job. If you're in a dead-end job, quit today and do something that you want to do. But what's a job? Just over broke. Just over broke.
How many people quit their jobs?
Your job is your life. It's what you want to be doing. So do what you want to be doing. And let's figure out a way to take this and make it so that we can follow the way that nature works Let's look at our water systems, the way they flow, and we always flow downhill. Let's use our energy so that we use energy that flows downhill. Let's look at our systems and start refurbishing them to work more like nature works, with logical backup systems and ways of really controlling how we act and how we deal with things. It's time for us to be part of the picture again, as individuals working together, making something different. It's important that we take what we have now and we say, okay, that didn't work, let's move on. If we work with the same systems we've been working with, we get the same solutions that haven't worked yet.
We need to start our own money in Ashland, like the Bert share.
The question was, could I address the farm system and the water runoff and how we could take this and work it so that it works on smaller scales, I suppose. Factory farms don't work. We can look at the pollution. We don't even need to get into that. I had a small 5-acre farm in Roseburg where I raised rabbits and horses and a couple other things. And the water systems in local farm is real important. If we were to set up a water system for a house that had diversions so that we weren't on the municipal water system but we were coming up with a spring or a well, what I would suggest is to make the gray water system, anything that has been used and poured, put that into the garden. That's the proper place where gray water ought to go. The earth is a major filtration system, and composts are the way to re-add value to the earth. There's so much that the carbon cycle is one that's a lot more complicated than the water cycle, but they mix with each other. And the water cycle is basically water evaporates, goes up into the clouds, condenses, falls back as rain, ends up in the ocean. 5% of the water ends up in the ocean. But when you look at the carbon circulation, carbon sequestration, I think the biggest problem that we have with carbon is that we're making too many humans and just displacing all the other animals and systems off the earth. That what we really need to do is look at our big animals and start trying to save our elephants and our whales and our rhinos and other things, because as soon as man is the biggest animal on earth, you know who the next target is. Water is just something that we all need to protect. And anytime we come to a system where somebody else is after our water, it ought to make our radar screen really high.
Have you done any work with the GID? Second ago, looking at how that
I have not. I was on TID system for a while. TID is Talent Irrigation District. And what we found is that the Talent Irrigation District sprays their canals. And so they stopped? That's good. The latest I had heard was as of 2 years ago they hadn't. But I'm glad they have. Because the idea of spraying the ditches and then running water through your ditches just doesn't work. It just puts the spray all over your crops. I don't know. So once again, to repeat the major result of the conversation, everybody should drink a glass of water when they get home. And if you think about your hydration level, as soon as you start feeling tired or weak, get some more water into yourself. If you keep your hydration level up, that's one of the best things you can do for your health. But when you put things like coffee or tea or powdered sugar into your water, it no longer acts as water for hydration value, a lot of those different things you put in your water tend to serve as diuretics. And so they'll cause you to lose water as opposed to gain water.